My name is John Smith. Law enforcement calls it an alias, but I will get to the reason behind that later. For most of my life, things were pretty ordinary. I made it through high school in the middle of the pack and went on to a state university. I majored in business, focusing on marketing, and after graduation, I landed a job in sales. It turned out I had a knack for it and genuinely enjoyed the work. A decade later, I had climbed the ladder and was the general sales manager for a mid-sized company in the region. I never got around to getting married in my younger days, so financially, I was doing pretty well for myself. Then I met Sarah. She was divorced and had a 10-year-old daughter. We hit it off, fell in love, and within a year of dating, we got married. Sarah had a small real estate business she inherited from her first husband. At least, that's what she told me. I later found out it was actually part of the divorce settlement. For the first few years, everything was going smoothly. I can honestly say I was a good husband, and I tried my best to be a great father to her daughter. Now, kids were never something I wanted, which is why I had a vasectomy at 25. Sarah had her tubes tied after her first kid, so we never had to worry about that. The trouble started when the economy hit a rough patch, and then the pandemic followed, bringing another recession right after. Her real estate business nearly went under. Nearly, but she managed to save it. How did she do it? By bringing in a silent partner. The thing is, this partner was so silent that no one, not even I, knew who he was. And that started causing problems between us. Why would she not tell me who this mystery guy was? Every time I asked, it sparked a fight that usually ended with me sleeping on the couch. Her response was always the same. He wants to stay anonymous. If I tell you, that would defeat the whole purpose, wouldn't it? This whole secrecy thing was eating me up. I could not wrap my head around why she would not trust me with something like that. I mean, I was her husband. I had a right to know. After about 3 months of this nonsense driving me nuts, I went to my best friend for advice. I have known David since we were kids, and he has always been the guy I can count on. David ran his own business, an auto parts store, and after a couple of break-ins, his insurance company made him install a security system. He went all out and got this top-of-the-line spy gear, installing cameras himself after closing one night. It turned out his thieves were employees. David suggested I do the same thing to figure out what was really going on with Sarah's business. Now, I did not work at her real estate office, and I hardly ever went there, so I did not have any keys. But I did know where Sarah kept her extra set in the house. One day, she told me she was going to a mortgage conference in Chicago and would be gone for 3 days. That was my shot. I waited until the secretary locked up and left for the day, then I snuck in. I hid cameras all over her office, another one in the lobby, and one aimed at the parking lot. The cameras were motion-activated, recording both video and audio, and sent everything to a website I could check whenever I wanted. It did not take long for the truth to surface. The day after Sarah got back from Chicago, I logged into the site, curious to see what would come up. I watched her sitting at her desk, going about her usual routine. Around 5 in the evening, the secretary left for the day, and Sarah locked the door. She hung around for a bit until a black SUV pulled up outside. Out stepped a tall black man, a big guy carrying a gym bag. I recognized him right away. It was Mike Johnson. Back in college, he was a football star, an All-American tight end. He could have gone pro, but his career was cut short when he got busted smuggling a boatload of marijuana. His story was pretty well known, especially if you followed football like I did. Sarah unlocked the door and let Mike in, and that is when my world flipped upside down. They hugged, kissed, and it was not just a peck on the cheek. His hands were all over her, and she seemed pretty happy about it. Then he asked, "Did your dumb husband buy that convention story?" She laughed and said, "Hook, line, and sinker. He thinks I was in Chicago the whole time." Then they went on to talk about their real trip to New Orleans and how they had been spending time with a guy named Carlos Martinez. Apparently, he was not a nice guy at all, some cartel leader from Mexico with blood on his hands. As I watched the two of them together, I could feel my blood boiling. I could not believe what I was seeing. I was glued to the screen, my heart racing as I continued to watch Sarah and Mike. I couldn't shake the disbelief from my mind. How could she betray me like this? I felt like a fool for trusting her. I thought I knew her better than this, yet here she was, caught in a web of deceit with a man who had a criminal past. They moved to the couch, and I could see her snuggling up to him, laughing and sharing stories. My fists clenched as I listened to their conversation. Mike was bragging about how much money they had made with Carlos, dealing drugs right under my nose. "We're rolling in it," he said, flashing a grin that made my stomach turn. "No more real estate woes for you." "I just need to keep this under wraps," she replied. "I don't want John to find out. He's clueless. He thinks I'm just a struggling real estate agent." The way she said it stung, as if I were just an obstacle in her life. I felt the urge to confront her, to demand answers. But what good would it do? I had the proof now. I could finally see the truth for what it was, and it was ugly. It was not just an affair. It was a partnership in crime. I knew that if I confronted her now, it would only lead to chaos and more lies. I needed to gather my thoughts and figure out my next move. The next few days were a blur. I kept monitoring the cameras, feeling sick every time I saw them together. They were meeting regularly, always in the office when it was supposed to be closed, always with that same smug attitude. They laughed and talked about their plans, and I learned more about Carlos and his operation. It was clear they were deeply involved in something dangerous. I realized that I had to tread carefully. This was not just about my marriage anymore. One evening, as I sat in front of my computer, I noticed something that made my heart drop. Sarah had a safety deposit box at the bank, a detail I hadn't considered before. It was the perfect hiding spot for all the cash they were raking in. My mind raced with possibilities. What if I could get my hands on that money? If I played my cards right, I could expose her, take the money, and vanish before they even knew what hit them. I decided to follow her the next day. I needed to see where she went after work. I had to know what else she was hiding. I parked across the street from her office and waited. The sun dipped below the horizon as I watched her leave. She climbed into her car, and my pulse quickened. As I trailed her through the city, I felt a mix of anger and adrenaline coursing through me. I followed her to a nondescript building tucked away in a commercial area. My stomach dropped when I realized it was a bank. She walked in, and I parked a block away, waiting for what felt like an eternity. After about 20 minutes, she came out, carrying a small envelope. My heart raced as I realized this could be it, the key to everything. I waited a moment to let her get a head start before following her back to the house. Once home, she stashed the envelope in her office, and I felt a surge of determination. I had to get that envelope. I needed proof of her betrayal, but I couldn't rush in blindly. I needed a plan. I was tired of being the one left in the dark. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, plotting my next move. I would wait for the right moment to confront her, not just about the affair but about everything. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. And most importantly, I wanted to reclaim my life. I began to wonder if what I was seeing was just idle chatter between two people passing the time. Then one day, the doorbell rang, and there stood Carlos with two other guys. We embraced, and I welcomed them inside. He asked if I was ready to start working for him. Hell yes. I had been struggling to find a job, and my grandma was working as a maid. We barely had enough money for groceries. He handed me a thick wad of cash, about $1,000, and took me to a Mexican restaurant. In a private room, we talked business over a steaming plate of fajitas. When we finished, I offered to pay the check. "I own this place, Poppy. Work hard and invest your money in legitimate businesses. That's the way to get ahead in this world." I took his advice to heart and followed his business plan exactly as he laid it out. We operated a cash-and-carry business modeled after McDonald's. You drive up, place your order, and pay the guy taking it. Move a little further down the street, and you pick up your order. Business was booming, and it just kept getting better. Then, a recession hit, and people struggled to pay their rent, but they always managed to find money to pay me to take their minds off their troubles. Just as things were starting to improve, the pandemic struck the country. People sat at home, using their government checks to pay me to feel good again. Grandma passed away, but I was able to give her a proper funeral. I was living in a luxury condo and counting my money. Life was good. One day, one of my order fillers got picked up by the cops. I felt the fear ripple through my organization. Just like McDonald's employees, he had insurance. I covered his legal fees, and he kept his mouth shut, pleading down to a year in county. His mother never missed a rent payment or went hungry. I made sure of it, and I also ensured every one of my guys knew what I had done for his family. That builds loyalty. But this is the drug business. When you're successful, everybody and their mother knows about you. One night, another crew moved in on one of my prime corners. I called Carlos. 2 nights later, there was a drive-by on that corner, and the two brothers selling drugs out of the back of their car were killed. At the same time, there was a fire at the house where their gang was known to hang out. 4 members were burned alive, and 3 more were never going to make it out of the hospital. The next day, my boys returned to that corner. 6 months ago, the unthinkable happened. Some guys tried to hit the stash house where I kept my money and drugs. It was well guarded, and when all was said and done, a couple of my guys were dead, but so were all the bad guys. I moved my money to my condo and posted guards day and night. I was trying to figure out what to do with the $15 million I had hidden in my spare bedroom when one of my boys showed up with a 19-year-old blonde college student. She wanted to talk to me about becoming one of my salespeople. She was in a sorority, and a lot of her friends loved to get high and party. She wanted me to front her the drugs. After I let her sample a new drug we were marketing as a better version of ecstasy, she woke up the next morning in my bed. "I'm sure I can sell this along with the coke. I'll get top prices." I looked into those blue eyes of hers and asked why she didn't just buy what she could afford and sell it to her friends. "Start small and grow into it," I suggested. "I don't have time to start small. I attend Ole Miss, so I have to pay out-of-state tuition, and it's due in 2 weeks. I also need money for dorm fees, food, and books. Can't your parents help?" I questioned. "No. Mama's real estate company is about to go bankrupt. My dad is dead, and my stepdad won't help. I have to do this myself or quit school." I asked for the name of her mother's real estate company after I told her I would give her enough to sell so she wouldn't have to worry about her tuition. She thanked me by offering her tight 19-year-old body. I accepted. The next morning, I walked into her mother's real estate office. It looked like it was on the verge of shutting down. One lady sat at the receptionist's desk. I asked to speak to Mary Ann. A pretty blonde woman about my age came out of an office to greet me. I could see where her daughter got her looks. Mama looked like she could pass for her daughter's big sister, the only difference being Mama's breasts, which were noticeably larger and obviously augmented. "I'm interested in income-producing property," I said. She took out a book and showed me pictures of a strip mall that was for sale. The owner had died, and his heirs wanted to sell. Then she showed me pictures of 3 houses that the same man had owned. She said they were for sale as well, and were excellent rental properties. She leaned over my shoulder, pointing out the amenities of the houses with her manicured nails. "What would they all cost me?" "Cash money. All 3 houses and the strip mall?" she asked. I grinned and nodded as her ample bosom brushed against my ear when she stood up. She hurried back behind her desk, put on a pair of reading glasses, and began to punch numbers into a calculator. I watched her look up over her glasses and smile a little. "Somewhere just under 11 million, she said, thinking it through. "Let's offer them 10 million. All cash at closing." "Cash?" I asked, surprised. "You mean like a cashier's check?" "No, cash. Like actual money," she said, standing up with a firm look. She walked over to the door and told her secretary to take the rest of the day off. She locked the front door and came back to her office, looking ready to get things done. The room felt cozy. There was a couch and some chairs with a coffee table. She plopped down on the couch, kicked off her heels, and I noticed the tops of her thigh-high stockings. It was an exciting sight. "We have to be careful," she said, her tone serious. "We can't involve any banks or mortgage companies in this deal. I'll look for properties that are privately owned, with no loans on them. I think we should start a company to handle the buying, like a real estate firm. We can manage everything, from renting to repairs." "That sounds good to me," I replied. "Just keep my name out of it. You'll be my silent partner. No one will know you're involved," she promised. "When can we close if the sellers accept your offer?" I asked. "Anytime you want, partner," she said confidently. "I'll need some cash for the offer. Earnest money, you know," I reminded her. "Do you have a place to keep it?" she asked, moving to her desk. She pulled a picture of herself receiving an award off the wall, revealing a safe behind it. "Come here," she said, gesturing for me to follow. I walked over as she spun the combination and opened the safe. Inside, I saw a couple of documents. Is this big enough for $1 million? She asked. Definitely, I replied. It could hold the whole 10 million. Who knows about this safe or the combination? I asked. No one, not even my husband, she said, looking serious. If I'm keeping my money here, I want the combination, I insisted. She grabbed a pencil, wrote it down on a sticky note, and handed it to me. After closing the safe, I tried to spin the dial, but it wouldn't open. Let me help you, she said, placing her hand over mine. I noticed her wedding ring shining. Together, we turned the dial until I heard a satisfying click. The safe opened. Smiling, I turned to her. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around my neck and pulled me in for a kiss. It was a thrilling moment that stirred something deep inside me. I started unbuttoning her blouse, my heart racing. When she revealed her lacy bra, I was amazed. I gently unclasped it without her saying a word. She gasped, "Please, no marks." My husband. With a grin, she slipped out of her blouse and skirt, laying them on the desk. Then she led me back to the couch. After some time together, she went to the bathroom. When she returned, she was smiling. So, do we have a deal? Of course, I said, chuckling lightly. The next morning, I called her to say I'd bring the cash over that afternoon. She told me to come by around 5. After I secured the money in the safe, our day turned into another repeat of our previous meetups, the excitement of secrecy making it all the more thrilling. Her calls became routine. She told me the sellers accepted my offer and invited me to her office to celebrate that afternoon. There had been an attempted coup in the cartel. Carlos had taken a shot at the king and missed, thanks to an assassin he hired who turned out to be loyal to the old man. Now, Mr. Rodriguez was second in command, a position once held by Carlos. He revealed that Carlos, Mike, and a woman named Sophia had plotted this takeover in a New Orleans hotel. I wondered how they got Carlos to talk before burying him in the desert, but didn't ask. Mr. Rodriguez offered me a deal. I could replace Mike as their distributor in Memphis if I killed him and his new woman. Fueled by anger over what Mike had done to Cindy, I accepted. That Wednesday, I met Cindy at a motel in Oxford. I warned her not to go to Memphis that week, fearing for her safety. She expressed concern about Mike's potential reaction, but I reassured her that the cartel would handle him and that I'd soon be in charge. She relaxed, though she was worried about her tattoos. I told her we'd deal with those later. We spent the night together, undisturbed by thoughts of Mike. The next morning, she left for class, and I returned to Memphis. Sunday, she called Mike, claiming she couldn't come due to a sorority meeting. He sounded disappointed. The following day, I arrived at Mike's condo with a bucket of chicken from his favorite restaurant. The guard was surprised to see me, but my silenced pistol quickly took him down. I stepped inside to find another guard watching television. A quick shot took him out, and I could hear Mike with someone in the bedroom. I walked to the door and peered in. There was Sophia, begging Mike to be harder. She saw me and screamed. I shot her in the eye as she tried to warn Mike. He scrambled up, but I shot him twice before delivering a final shot to his groin. "This one's for Cindy," I said before shooting him in the head. After making a call to Mr. Rodriguez, I waited for his men to arrive. In about 15 minutes, 3 Hispanic men showed up, taking photos of the scene and ransacking the apartment. They found almost $2 million, but Mr. Rodriguez handed me only $100,000, suggesting I take Cindy to Las Vegas for tattoo work. They left, and I had one more thing to do. I drove to Tashana's tattoo parlor, pistol in hand. She was the only one there. "This is for what you did to Cindy," I said before shooting her. Her customer screamed, but I silenced her with 2 shots. Over Thanksgiving, I took Cindy to Vegas. While there, a tattoo artist transformed the ugly tattoo of Mike into a colorful bird. I changed the name Mike to Mommy on the heart tattoo. I never told David about the safe I found in my mother's house, nor the properties worth $15 million that now belong to me. I tried to convince him to leave the drug life behind, but he refused, believing he was untouchable. I sold everything, and after taxes, I had almost $11 million. Alone, I opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands and bought a nice place on the beach. I live off fresh seafood and enjoy life every day. As for Cindy, I took the $7 million and vanished into the western mountains of the United States. I spent my days fishing in the spring and summer, hunting in the fall, and snowmobiling in the winter. I've met a few snow bunnies along the way, but I'm content with my life, free of complications. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Did it meet your expectations, or did it take an unexpected twist? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story hooked you, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here, now's the perfect time to subscribe for more captivating stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.